My name is Francisco Vargas. I'm Solutions Architect at Akamai, and this is my partner.
My name is Álvaro Segura, and we have here Jay Sigland as well.
Yep. All right, so this is the agenda for today's presentation. We're going to start with a quick overview. Then we're going to talk a little bit about where we can use these property manager variables. After that, we're going to talk about how to set, extract, and transform the values of these variables. We're going to also talk about a feature which is called custom behaviors. And finally, we're going to go over a couple of use cases and some hands-on there. So let's start with a quick overview. Before we start, just a little disclaimer here. So when we talk about advanced, it's the same as metadata, it's the same as XML. So we're talking about those chunks of code that we include in your configuration. When something is not available on the user interface, then we are going to need advanced metadata, right? So have you ever faced a situation where, for example, you need to do an advanced change or just like a simple parameter change, but you need to contact professional services to do that? Okay, so the purpose of this presentation is actually to take self-serviceability and leverage it using property manager variables. So what's a property manager variable? Well, property manager is the interface that you use on the Luna portal to create your configurations. And well, a variable obviously is a container where you can have things like, for example, a number or just a string, right? With these variables, you can do a lot of things. We're going to be talking a little bit about each of those in a few slides. You can do a match. You can set a value on the variable. You can extract, transform, and generate a value using this property manager variable. We have two kinds of property manager variables. The first of those is a built-in variable, which is a predefined set of values that is included on the variable. And then we have user-defined variables, which are variables that you can actually create yourselves and set. We have a specific syntax for these property manager variables. So when you're going to use these variables on that configuration, in the specific fields that are designed for that on the different behaviors, you'll need to follow this syntax. The syntax is type.the name, and this will be surrounded by brackets, okay? So since I mentioned that we have two types of variables, right? Built-in and user-defined. So we'll have two kinds of syntax here, built-in.the name and user.the name. This is the syntax that you'll need to use when you fill a specific field on a behavior using the user interface. Okay, so how can you create a property manager variable? If we talk about user-defined variables, you can create them using the property manager. You will find a box, something like this, and you'll have 4 fields. In this case, the first one is the variable name. So as you can see, there is a fixed prefix here, which is PM_user, and then you can select the name that you would like to give to the variable. Then there is an optional field for an initial value. In this case, it's true. Then a little description about the variable. And finally, you must select between 3 options for security settings. So let's talk a little bit about the security settings. You'll have 3 options here. The first one is create a hidden variable. The second one is a visible variable. And the third one is a sensitive variable. So when we talk about a visible variable, it means that this variable can be exposed using pragma headers. So if you send a specific pragma headers for Akamai, the end user will receive some headers with some information. And the value of the variable will be exposed. When you select hidden variable, even if you use pragma headers, you're not going to be able to see the value in the response headers on the end user. And finally, sensitive variables. This is almost the same as hidden variables. The only difference is that you cannot use this variable, or you cannot expose the value of this variable even in other different behaviors. For example, if you're modifying or setting a header using Akamai, you are not be able to use a variable which is sensitive to expose the value, or you cannot include this variable in a log field, for example. Well, a use case for a sensitive value would be something like it's going to contain really important information, really personal and sensitive information, right? Visible, it's going to be when, well, you don't care about exposing the value of the variable. When we talk about how to create user-defined variables, you don't only have the option to create them using Property Manager. You can also use an API which is called PAPI. So you can find a lot of information about how to create, modify user-defined variables using this specific API on developer.akamai.com. So you can go there to get more information. Then, how to create a built-in variable? Well, actually, you don't create a built-in variable. A built-in variable is a predefined set of values, so you don't create actually a built-in variable. This is an example of the values that you have available on a built-in variable. As you can see, this is just like a sample. For example, you can see building.ak client IP. This value will contain the end user's IP. So you will see a lot of different useful values there. You can take a look.
So location, where can you use PM variables? You can use them in matches. Those are conditionals. And in this example, we are seeing a match. In this case, you'll see that we have a PM variable, and we are matching the content of that variable, in this case, the string true, so that the behaviors within that match are going to be executed. You can use them in behaviors as well. In this case, we have a modified outgoing response header, and it's really simple to identify in which behaviors you're going to be able to use PM variables, and in those behaviors, you're going to find the fields. In this case, we have the header value, and it's really visible where it says variable support. So on those fields, you're going to be able to use the PM variables. In this case, we're using for the two types of variable Francisco just mentioned, a PM user value and a built-in variable. Interesting thing here is that you can concatenate the string. We have a dash in the middle, so the field it's going to have the value of both variables and the string. You can use them on other behaviors. You can use them on redirects, modify path, set cookie. There are other behaviors where you can use them. We have the possibility to use them on advanced match. These matches are matches that you'll need professional services to create. But the interesting thing here is that going forward, if you need to modify the match, for example, a string, you can modify the PM variable, and you'll be modifying the match without the need of professional services. In this case, we have the PM variable value there. Have you ever tried to modify a advanced behavior, or if you need an advanced behavior? Advanced behaviors need the help of professional services to be modified, but you can ask professional services to include PM variables in the behaviors. So if you need to modify the behavior on a simple way, in this example, we are going to enable the behavior with a PM variable, and we're going to modify the behavior with a PM variable, and this is a modify incoming request, so we're modifying the value of the header. Yeah.
These need to be created, the advanced matches and advanced behaviors need to be created by professional services. Once they're created, are they visible to the contents? Are they visible to the end user, to us developers?
They are visible, but they are not modifiable.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea here is that, okay, you cannot modify the chunk itself, but if you're using PM variables, those PM variables, you can actually modify the value by yourself without our need, right? So the idea is that you start using and asking your implementers to use PM variables to expose the values of these advanced metadata, so you can at least have some control over those values, right? So that's how you can leverage your self-serviceability.
Yeah. And we can use PM variables on custom behaviors. This is a cool feature that it's coming soon. I think you're going to like it a lot.
All right, we're going to be talking a little bit more about custom behaviors in just a few slides. So let's talk a little bit about how, what you can do with these property manager variables. First of all, you can set the value of a PM variable using three methods: expression, extraction, or generation. In this case, we're only talking about user-defined variables, right? Because built-in are just predefined values. So let's take a look. You will find a behavior which is called set variable. In this behavior, you will have the three options to set the value: expression, extract, and generate. With expression, you'll be able just to create your own expression. And the nice thing here is that you can combine different things. You can put your own string, like something cool, and you can actually combine a built-in variable and a user-defined variable. So it's pretty flexible. The second option is extracting. With this extracting, what you can do is actually get data from a specific source. So what are the sources available in this case? This is the list. So for example, you can get information from a request header, extract the value from that request header, and then do something with that value, right? In this case, this is a specific example where we are extracting values from Edgecape data, which is geolocation data. And specifically, we're extracting the country code of the end user. So you can extract that value and put it on the variable. The third option is to generate a value. In this case, you are generating a value from a random number. And you can see that you can even use other PM variables to define the minimum and the maximum of this random number. As you could see, there is a common denominator in all these three options, which is operation. So you can apply an operation on each set of the variable. So in this case, you will find a lot of operations that you can apply, coming from the simplest, like, I don't know, lowercase, uppercase, going to the complex ones, like substitute using regular expressions. So you'll have a lot of options here to do operations over the value that you just extracted.
Custom behaviors. This is a interesting feature that it's coming. So have you ever had the need to add any advanced behavior, and that advanced behavior, you need to use it over and over again, and you need to use it, let's say, on different configurations, or you don't want to wait for professional services to add that specific advanced behavior? So with custom behaviors, you can actually add those specific chunks of metadata or XML, and those are added by professional services. But going forward, you can select them in this behavior. It's called custom behaviors, and you'll have a drop-down menu where you can click, and you'll have the previously added behaviors. You can select the behavior you want, and you can ask professional services to include PM variables on that behavior as well.
We're going to see an example in a few slides. So, okay, so let's talk about some use cases. This is like a very interesting part. We have like 7 use cases that we found, which are really interesting. So the first case is very simple, but it could be very powerful. So the idea here is to use a PM variable to enable or disable a chunk of advanced metadata. So even though you cannot modify the advanced metadata, you can actually enable it or disable it using just an exposed variable there. So the logic is really simple. You just match on a specific PM variable. You ask professional services to do this. If the value is true, which is a value that you can modify yourselves, then the advanced metadata will be executed. If it's false, it's not going to be executed. This is an example. So you can see the match using the PM user variable, and then you'll have the snippet of metadata there, and you can enable it or disable it by yourselves.
In this case, we're going to show you how to send to the origin the country code of the end user using PM variables as well. First, you have to set the PM variable. We're going to extract the value, and we're going to put it on a PM user country variable from our Edgecape data. That's the country code that's going to be extracted. And going forward to the origin, we're gonna add a header. And the interesting part here is that we're gonna use the PM variable in the field header value. The previous one, it's only the header name. And in the header value, we're gonna put the country code of the end user.
Okay, this is a third example. In this case, you are creating custom redirections. We are using a behavior called redirect plus, but you can use the standard redirection behavior. So in this case, you're gonna see that you're able to create the redirection using values that are coming from a specific variable. So in this case, we are using a built-in variable, which is AK scheme, that it's gonna be HTTP or HTTPS, depending on the request of the end user. And then we are using another variable, which is called PM user redirect, to define the location of the redirection. So as you can see, this PM user redirect can come from a lot of different sources, right? So you can extract the value from a request header, use that value, transform that value, operate over that value, and create a redirection to a specific hostname based on that. Or let's say you can collect information from country code, and based on that you can set a specific value to that variable, and then you can do a redirection to that place. So it's extremely flexible. It's just about creativity, I think.
Another cool case, it's to modify the cache key. The cache key, it's a unique identifier for HTTP objects. So let's say you have different devices and you want to modify that identifier based on the device. For example, a laptop or a mobile phone, a tablet. So you can add the device on the value of the PM variable, and you can use that to modify the cache key.
All right. A fifth scenario here, just a use case, is a path substitution using regular expressions. And this is really powerful as well. So in this case, we are extracting, we have a predefined or a built-in variable which is called AK path, which will contain the path that is incoming from the end user. So you can extract that value, put it on a user-defined variable. In this case, we call it PM user path. Then, by operating over that value that you just extracted, you can substitute a specific part of the path with something else. So in this case, what we're doing is that we are changing bar to foo, and we are keeping the same number is coming with bar. So in this case, it's 89, but it could be whatever you need. It could be 1, 2, 3, and we are saving that value and put it there and just modifying the foo part. So this is extremely powerful. For example, you can use set variable, the behavior that we just mentioned. So as you can see, we have a regex expression there, and we are using a replacement, which is foo, and then the value that we extracted, which is in this case a specific number. Or you can actually use a behavior directly, which is modifier going request path, which also has this option of regular expression replacements. In this case, we are not using PM variables, but we wanted to show you that you can actually set a variable with this value and do whatever you need. Okay, the sixth use case here is a redirection to a specific language tag, but you're going to create that language tag automatically. So a language tag is something like that, like when you have something like a slash and the country of the end user, and then the language that it is using. So the idea here is to use variables to create this automatically. So we're going to extract the location of the end user, and then we're going to use the accept language value that is coming in the request header. We're going to extract the language and the end user's country. We're going to combine those, and we are automatically going to create the language tag. So in this case, you can define a preset or a list of values that are available on your site, right? So if this is not matching that list, you can set a default value. Let's say NUS, for example, as a default value. So this is really powerful. Implementing this requires some variables, like something like 8 variables. So it's out of the scope of this presentation to explain how to implement the whole solution. But there is an article in the community explaining how to implement. And well, we're going to be also, Alvaro and me, we're going to be on the expert bar. So if you have any specific questions, just look for us. We have all those scenarios in a configuration with implementation, and we can share with you all these steps that you need to do in order to recreate this. Or you can look for that specific article in the community, localization regex with cookies via variable support. The last use case that we are studying here is another really nice and interesting use case. We're going to delete a specific cookies coming from a list. And this list is going to be defined in a PM variable. So as you can see, we came from the simple scenarios to something more complex, right? So in this case, let's say that the end user is sending 4 cookies, A, B, C, and D. The goal here is to delete one of those, but all those actions are going to be done by the edge servers or the Akamai server, right? So you'll have a PM variable, which is called cookie delete in this case, and you're going to put a list there separated by a comma. So you're going to say, okay, I want to delete cool cookie B and cool cookie C. So in this case, this is the expected result. So we are expecting to delete B and C, and just in the origin, the only cookies that are reaching are A and D. So as I mentioned, we put this all in a configuration. So we have a way to reproduce this using curl or simple requests. In this case, we are using a header which is called test with a number, and we can actually test all of those use cases. We're only going to do a demo on this last scenario, but if you need to recreate any of the others, you can look for us at the expert bar. So in this case, you can see that we are including 4 cookies, cool cookie A, B, C, and D, and its value, right? This is what the origin is getting. As you can see, it's getting cookie A and D. So B and C were removed. And from the end user's perspective, what we are getting is a set cookie for cookie B and cookie C with an empty value and an expiration date, which is 1980. So the cookie is going to be removed, right? So we are removing the cookie not only to the origin, but at the end user, right? And all this using variable support on Property Manager. Okay, so let's do a brief hands-on here just to demonstrate what you just talked about. And we would like to show you Property Manager and Luna. And we're going to show this specific last case. All right, so go up. So as you can see here, the last 4 variables are the ones that we used for this last use case. As you can see, the only one that you should modify is the last one, which is cookie delete, which is a comma-separated list of cookies that you would like to delete. So you just need to define the name of the cookie there. And this is completely self-serviceable. You don't need to reach us to do this, right? You just can modify that variable and push to production without our help. Okay, go a little bit up. So as you can see, this is the implementation. So as you can see, we are using some set variables, behaviors here to define a couple of things. We're taking the value of the list that you just put it on the Property Manager variables list, and then we are replacing some of the comma with some regex expression to use that on the advanced part of this. So if you scroll down, you're going to see that we are using set variable on a couple of variables. And if you scroll a little bit more, here we are using custom behavior, which was the feature that is coming any soon. So in this case, professional services just put that advanced metadata there and add it to the custom behavior. This is a behavior that you can add by yourselves. So all this can be done by yourself without our help. You just need to ask us, hey, I would like to have that advance on a custom behavior, and I would like to put this whatever I need and whenever I need on any configuration that I have. So all that advance is the required advance to execute the logic that I just explained. So in this case, let's look at the curl. Okay. We're going to execute a curl. So wait a second. As you can see, it's the same curl that I showed on the presentation, but this is a live demo. We are just calling the test number 7, and then we are sending 4 cookies as well. Cookie A, B, C, and D, and their values. And we're expecting to remove cookie B and cookie C, right? So if we execute it.
In this case, we are using a origin that it's going to return on the body the headers that it got. So as you can see, we have the 2 cookies. Those are the headers that it received the origin. Yeah. And we have the cookies, the cool cookie A and the cool cookie D.
Yeah, these are the headers that the origin is seeing. So the headers are returned on the body because of the implementation that we did in this case on the origin. So we are only getting A and D, as Albert mentioned. And if you, okay, we have it there. Those are the headers that the end user is receiving. So as you can see, we are receiving a couple of set cookies, which says cool cookie B and C with an empty value, then a domain. That domain is just like a dummy domain, but you can define whatever you need in your configuration. A specific path, you can also define that on your configuration, and an expires date as well. So all of this, you can manage it by yourself without our help, just by including custom behaviors, a couple of PM variables, and a list of comma-separated cookies. So if you go back to Luna, scroll up a little bit. So, for example, here, this is the use case for the location tag automatically created. As you can see, it's a long set of rules that you need to define, but all those rules are using PM variables. So if you go in the next rule, you can see it's just like set variable. We're extracting the country code. Then we're extracting from, this is really interesting. We're extracting from the header name accept language. We're just extracting the first 2 characters, which are going to contain the language that is preferred coming from the browser, right? If you scroll down, we are then doing some operations over the variables. So for example, we are operating over this variable to do a lower case. And then we are defining, this is the combination of the variables, actually. As you can see, we are combining the extracted language dash the user extracted country. And after that, we have more logic. And this is the list that you can also control of the values that you actually allowed on your origin, right? So if the combination that we created is not part of your origin's options, we're going to have another step, which is also really interesting. Let's say that is not part of the list that is defined there. So there is another step. Go up to the variables. No, to the variables. Go up to the list. Yeah. Oh, yeah, right there. So we have PM user default languages there. So as you can see, it's a list which says US equals N, GB equals N, Brazil equals Portuguese, and for example, Costa Rica equals Spanish. So what we're going to do is that if the combination that we created is not part of the list that I just showed you, we're going to use that predefined list to create another set of options. So in this case, if the request is coming from US, we're going to use English as the language. And if none of these options actually worked, we're going to have a final default behavior, which is going to tell, okay, just use NUS, and that's going to be the default value. So as you can see, it's completely automatic, and most of the time you're getting the right value for the right person, so the right language with the right country. And just as you can see here, we have all the different use cases that we created. So if you have any question about that, you can just reach us at the expert bar. And well, we are open to questions as well, if you want to ask something.
You said that
Yep.
some of this is coming soon. What specifically were you referring to? Just the custom behavior?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, only the custom behavior. The rest of things, you can do it right now. So property manager variables are available since, what was it, like this year? About a year ago, yeah.
Custom behaviors is like a library of advanced metadata that we won't automatically touch.
Like where they actually store, where's the custom behavior created?
The custom behavior is created in our database, and then when you edit your configuration, it'll pull it in every time you edit it.
Right.
So if you don't edit your configuration, you change that custom behavior, then you're throwing the whole. It's not only when you update, and
Yeah, and all the options that you ask to be included to professional services are going to be listed on that bar. In this case, we're using cool cookie removal behavior, but you can have a list of different things.
So that's just a whatever version initially, whatever's stored on there, and something's changed to the cookies. This is still the same as it was, right?
Mhm.
This custom behavior, is it something you purchase or?
no, it's free. So it's exactly like advanced metadata, except it's self-service.
And when you request custom behavior, you have to specifically say which ones you want, or?
Yeah, typically you want to take something that you know is already working. Right? So you don't want to necessarily create something just brand new or have your professional service to create something brand new. You want something that you're already working and you're using in one or more configurations. You say, okay, this is a useful snippet that I'd like to use over and over again in other places. And then you just, right now it's not automated in the UI for you to click on it and say, make this usable. It's not like a workflow. You have to just email or contact your account team to say, hey, I have this config, I have this advanced metadata snippet here, can you make it reusable? And then they'll turn it off for you within a few hours.
Can you use the variables for like hosting or something? We have, a bunch of configs that are the same.
Absolutely,
So combine them into one and just have hosting.
Yep. Actually, I have seen some cases where let's go here. So when you define the origin, that's another example. When you define the origin, you're gonna also able to use a variable there. So in this case, we're use a fixed origin, but you can use whatever you need. So you can populate a variable and then use that variable as the origin. So you can have something really flexible there.
Especially for if you have a SaaS application where you have potentially hundreds of thousands of different origins, right? Some vanity domain type of SaaS application, and then you have some origin that we have a name convention. You can use variable to define what the origin will be, and then just plug it right in there.
Any other question? So if you have any specific question or you would like us to share any of these implementation, just look for us at the expert bar. And I think we're giving you back like a few minutes. So thank you very much for coming today. I hope this has been informative for you. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of the Edge. Thank you.
Thank you.